Thousand Pound Sisters is one of the greatest TV shows of all time, and today I'm going to show you why. It's mainly because of the stars, Amy and Tammy Slayton, two sisters separated by 1 year, and both of them having a combined weight of around 1,000 pounds, hence the name of the show, which centers around their weight loss journeys. But there is so much more to these two than meets the eye, or than the show tells you, which is actually quite a bit, and I think it's an excellent place to start. Tammy and Amy would have a relatively normal childhood, and would not be noticed by the wider public until much later, because of them starting a YouTube channel. Amy especially loved making videos, challenges, makeup, just about anything that she found trendy on early YouTube. And it was this YouTube channel that led the producers to the Slayton sisters, eventually creating Thousand Pound Sisters. But Tammy and especially Amy were already very infamous across the internet, having established themselves as problematic early on. These are some of the controversies that the sisters got into before the show, and that it doesn't tell you about. The most well-known would be an alleged scam that the two were pulling. After becoming well-established on YouTube, Amy would open a GoFundMe, claiming that Tammy had passed away, and that they needed to raise money for her, quote, double-sized casket. The only issue is, and I'm sure most of you already know this, Tammy is still very much alive. She was just in the hospital in really bad shape at the time, and Amy had so little faith in her recovery that she got started on the GoFundMe. But Tammy would recover and survive many more health scares, which we'll cover in detail later. Something else that Amy got a lot of flack for was an incident revolving around a dog. Allegedly, Amy left the dog in a hot RV for an extended period of time. It was a German Shepherd, an extremely high-energy dog, that ended up busting out of the RV and attacking Amy when it saw her. This would be the first of many times that Amy has been bitten by an animal, which will also be covered later in this video. But all jokes aside, the dog had to be put down due to Amy's alleged negligence. And it was those two controversies that had landed the sisters in some hot water with their audience. And I think truly that's what brought the attention of these producers, because soon after discovering the sisters, TLC would order the first season, giving people a much better look into the life of the Slayton sisters. Episode 1 begins with an introduction to Amy, 31, and Tammy, 32. They live together in a small house with Michael, Amy's husband, and a little bit, their dog, on the outskirts of a small town called Dixon, Kentucky. Tammy has been living with Amy and Michael since having a stay in the hospital for gout. They are assisting with her daily needs as well as her recovery. We then see an average shopping haul for the Slayton sisters, Amy filling a shopping cart to the brim with snack foods and other unhealthy meals. After that, we're given a little bit of insight on the sisters' childhood, saying that they grew up very poor and that their mother wasn't very loving. They would attribute this and the passing of their grandmother as sources for their eating problems, which have led to numerous medical issues in adulthood. Both have type 2 diabetes and have to be hooked up to CPAP machines every night. They also have a plethora of other medical issues, like thyroid problems and blood pressure, and with Amy admitting that she drinks 16 sodas a day, it's not very shocking. We then get introduced to Amy's husband, Michael, a soft-spoken man, and the muscle of the group, being the one that has to push around Tammy everywhere in her wheelchair. Amy and Michael are newlyweds, who have been married a couple of months but together for years. Tammy only moving in recently after her stay in the hospital with gout. Tammy also has a lot of medical problems, arguably more than Amy. She needs help with basic tasks and claims that she feels like a burden on Amy and Michael, not even leaving the house in 6 years due to her weight. The sisters both then explain their desire to have gastric bypass surgery, which was the entire point of the first season. Amy's main motivation is that she wants to have a baby, and Tammy's is that she wants to live. After making such a pivotal decision in their lives, they decided that they wanted to have a lunch with their mom to tell her. Like I said, Tammy hadn't been out of the house in years, besides the occasional visit to the hospital, and the entire process of her getting in the car was very painful, positioning herself at an awkward angle down on the floor, unable to wear a seatbelt. Tammy said that she wanted to attend this lunch to prove to her mom that she could do it. After a lot of effort, they make it to the table travel with their mother, and we get to meet what I consider to be one of the villains of this story, Tammy and Amy's mom, Darlene. If I could describe Darlene in one word, it would be crotchety. She is one of the saltiest human beings I have ever witnessed, and absolutely scathing when it comes to criticism, especially of her own children. She absolutely sucks. I don't like to include my opinion very much here on this channel, but Darlene is just the worst. The second they get there, she starts eyeing them up and down, and she just couldn't look more miserable to be there. And when they finally break the news of their desire to get gastric bypass surgery, this is her response.
I don't think you make it. I think you'll chicken out.
I don't think you'll make it. I think you'll chicken out. She would also say that Tammy's a quitter and that she didn't get it from her. She raised 5 kids. And the first time I saw this, my jaw hit the floor, and so many things made sense. I personally believe that this woman is a big reason for a lot of her children's problems. She seems almost incapable of caring. Tammy is extremely unwell, and being told that she's a chicken shit quitter probably isn't what she needed to hear. But don't worry, Darlene would be proved so very wrong. But not yet. Tammy still had many more years of struggles. I mean, we haven't even gotten to Jerry yet. God, I can't wait to talk about Jerry. After this disastrous lunch with their mother, we cut forward to see the Slayton sisters having a video call with their doctor, who immediately starts questioning them on their diet. And when he notices that they each have a large soda, he asks just how many they drink a day. And Amy admits that she drinks 8 to 12, contradicting her previous statement of 16. Amy says that she was told as a child that diet soda cancels out sugars, so that when they eat something like a snack cake, they should drink a diet soda to counteract the sugars. And the doctor would inform them that this is horribly wrong, that they needed to cut out all soda, and that these surgeries could be a life-saving procedure for them. But what they need to do next is travel from Kentucky to Atlanta to meet him in person. But they have one more stop to make along the way. Amy and Tammy have no idea what they weigh, because they have no scales capable of reaching a number that high, only knowing of one place that would, their local junkyard. Amy weighed in at around 406. She was absolutely devastated, saying that it's the biggest she's ever been, and Tammy is at 605. She's of course upset, but immediately takes accountability, claiming that it didn't get this way overnight, but that she's committed to changing. They both leave the junkyard and the episode ends, and the next one opens with them packing for their trip to Atlanta. Once again, the entire process is incredibly painful for Tammy. She claims that because of her weight, she's lost a lot of the cartilage in between her legs, and is pretty worried about this trip because it's going to take 8 hours. The trip was filled with many food stops and a lot of leg pain for Tammy, but eventually they made it to Georgia in one piece, and Amy would set up a baby monitor to keep an eye on Tammy overnight as she was sleeping in a separate room, creating this wholesome image. And the next morning they would go see the doc, talking to them a little bit about the procedure and giving them their weight loss goals. To get approved for weight loss surgeries, the doctors often require you to lose a portion of your weight before, proving that you won't overeat too much after the process is done. He would also advise that they meet with a dietitian before they leave back for Kentucky, who is also shocked when the sisters tell her that they are drinking 8 to 12 sodies each a day, and that's what Amy would call them, sodies. The dietitian tells them they can have one max, and sends them on their way. The next day they start back to Kentucky, and are bickering the entire way about their upcoming diet, exercise, the quality of Michael's driving, everything. This all wasn't off to a great start. The trip back was relatively uneventful, except for a time that Michael had to brake extremely hard, causing Tammy to fly forward and slam into the back of Amy's seat, and I thought for sure they were going to have to take her to the hospital. But she kinda just laughed it off, making it back safely. And when they get home, they start showing the first signs of progress, throwing out all of their unhealthy food. They say that food is like their friend, so a diet is like losing killing them. And there's no better example of this than when Amy has to throw out her giant tube of hamburger lovingly named Big Daddy. They got rid of almost everything in their fridge, except for a case of diet soda, which Amy claimed was for Michael, but everyone, including Tammy, knew the truth. Despite this slight misstep, we would still see a lot of diet and exercise from Amy, even visiting a personal trainer. Amy would also encourage Tammy to exercise through a video game called Just Dance, but Tammy almost immediately sat down, claiming that she couldn't do this. And this has been one of the things that's been holding Tammy back. She seems to have little to no faith in herself, and I just can't understand why.
I don't think you make it. I think you'll chicken out.
Michael loved the Just Dance segment, claiming that Amy's dancing just blew his mind, and it's so funny to see Michael painted in a good light here in the earlier seasons, because eventually the whole tone of this show is going to switch up on him, and it's not completely undeserved. But for now, Amy and Michael were painted as happy newlyweds, but Amy and Tammy's relationship was far different, especially around this time. We would cut to them going to a beauty salon, and Tammy was absolutely pissed when Amy wouldn't get out of her way.
How am I supposed to get through that with you standing there? Amy, why do you do this every time?
And this perfectly highlights what I was just talking about. The stress of the diet and the exercise was putting a lot of strain on the sisters, but things would get so much worse when they got home. Getting into this big fight about how Tammy uses Amy like a slave, Amy would say there are things that Tammy can do, she just doesn't want to, like walk without a walker, and Tammy wasn't a big fan of this either. Tammy has said before, due to her mobility issues, that she is unable to get up and walk away during an argument, so situations like this were pretty common. Amy did have somewhat of a point. Tammy was not taking her weight loss very seriously, but Amy should have known that picking at Tammy during this time was only going to lead to chaos, and I'm assuming that producers knew this too. This fight is one of the most iconic moments from the first season, and it would have some repercussions. The next episode, Amy and Michael would talk about moving Tammy out of the house. This was also the first episode that I noticed Michael's crazy long and dirty fingernails, mainly just his thumbnail. This isn't pointed out in the show in any way, but once you see it, you just can't stop thinking about it. Let's just say that Mike is a man of very few words, and this thumbnail only adds to the mystery. When they would get back from lunch, Amy would discuss the move with Tammy, who didn't seem very happy about this either. She said that she feels like she's being kicked out, and that she should be allowed to move out on her own time. She's also concerned that she won't be able to get the help that she needs, and this of course devolves into another fight. We then cut forward to a week later, and our ragtag team of heroes are making the journey back to Dr. Proctor's. Both are extremely nervous, but the car ride was a lot smoother. Wish I could say the same about the doctor's visit. Amy weighed in at around 390, only losing 10 pounds, a little bit under her goal, but the doctor said that at her weight she should be losing a lot more, doubting her adherence to the diet plan. But the situation with Tammy is even worse. She weighed in right around 600 pounds, losing only 8 since her last visit. The doctor is candid with Tammy and tells her that he doesn't know if she'll qualify. Her weight loss goal was twice as much as Amy's, and 8 pounds certainly isn't anywhere close to 50. The doctor keeps the same goal for the sisters and tells them that he'll see them again in a month. But before they leave, they meet with the psychologist, who recommends that they both focus on themselves, describing to them what codependence is and how they are both displaying signs of it. They both attribute a lot of the strain on their relationship with them living together. Amy feels partially responsible for Tammy's weight gain, and once again Tammy takes responsibility, saying that that's not the case, and I feel like this might have been a moment of healing in the sisters' relationship. So in my opinion, the trip ends on a good note and they go back to Kentucky once again. And they both continue to work on their weight loss, but this is when they start to diverge. Tammy doesn't seem to be putting in much effort and not making much progress, but Amy is. And Tammy reveals that she is nervous that Amy will get the surgery before her, claiming that she doesn't want to be left behind. And that is where episode 4 ends. And the next episode begins with them once again meeting Darlene, who who is wonderful as ever. She's always just so judgmental. I can tell that she still doesn't believe that either of them are going to get the surgery, but the main thing I want to talk about from this conversation is Amy's wedding. When Amy and Michael got married, almost none of her family could make it, so they had the idea to host a ceremony as a celebration. And during this visit, Amy would ask her mom to make sure and be there, because I think that she knew she wasn't gonna, and she wouldn't, but we'll get there, because we then cut to some of the very first talks of Jerry. Amy and Tammy are getting ready for the bachelorette party, and this is when Tammy opens up about her new online boyfriend, Jerry. Jerry is the primary antagonist of season 2, and in my humble opinion, one of the funniest things about this show. Tammy says that they met in a BBW chat room, and that there's just something about Jerry. He might be the one, but trust me, we will get a much more proper introduction to Jerry when he comes around in season 2, because we are far more occupied with Amy's bachelorette party. The first stop was a wine tasting, and the owner seemed horrified, but things would get so much worse when they got home, hiring a stripper that slightly resembled Dr. Proctor in what I consider to be the most uncomfortable moment of the entire series. Amy was having the time of her life, but the next moment she awoke to some terrible news. Her mom finally told her that she wasn't coming, she just didn't feel good. And I think everybody saw this coming from a mile away. Darlene just can't be bothered. But other than that, it was a beautiful ceremony. The only family of Amy's that was in attendance from what I saw was her sister Amanda, who was at the time married to Michael's brother. But I had heard for a long time that the Slayton family wasn't particularly close, and that in later seasons this family dynamic that they supposedly have is engineered for television. And I think this theory holds some water, because they fight like cats and dogs, but I'm getting way ahead of myself, because the next big thing to happen on the show would be their final visit with Dr. Proctor. The car rides had gone on smooth enough that there wasn't really anything to cover, but when they got to the doctor's office, there's a lot to talk about. Amy would weigh in at 375, just barely meeting her goal, but still getting approved for bariatric surgery. But Tammy would weigh in at 587, only losing 13 pounds, and she would be denied, something that she was of course very upset about. And when she went out to the lobby, she almost couldn't even talk to Amy. But Amy knew that Tammy had been denied. The doctor said that he would continue to see her as a patient if she continued to make progress, but that they were nowhere near her goal. And that's where the episode ends. And the next time we pick up, it's 2 days before Amy's surgery. Tensions are extremely high, with Tammy's jealousy being very apparent, getting into a massive fight in the car about how Amy doesn't do anything for Tammy, and how they need to help her more. Even Michael chimes into this argument but gets quickly shut down by Tammy. And when they get back to the hotel, I think I can realize why Tammy was so upset, because now they had to call their ultra-supportive mom Darlene and break the news that Amy had been approved but Tammy hadn't. And once again, Darlene acted like she just couldn't be bothered, as if she'd already written the two of them off. This, of course, was very upsetting to Tammy, but she now had a new outlet to deal with these emotions. Her boyfriend, Jerry. When she told Jerry that she was denied for surgery, he said that she'd get there someday, telling her not to give up, even though he liked bigger women. I want to make it very clear that this is all a facade from Jerry. This man was actively contributing to Tammy's weight gain in season 2, and there are so many secrets about this man that not even the show will tell you. That night, Jerry would make a multi-state trip to come meet Tammy. Tammy proclaiming that yes, the situation had gotten physical, but it wasn't about that. She felt a true romantic connection to Jerry. We then see Amy get her surgery. They show all of it, even the screens of the doctors ripping apart her stomach and putting it back together. It's extremely graphic and pretty gross, so I think that's all that really needs to be said. We then jump forward 2 months, and each of the sisters has made amazing progress. Tammy has become more committed to her diet, ditching her walker and becoming more mobile, hoping that with all of this exercise and perhaps new dieting, she can meet her goals and get approved for surgery very very soon. And then we see Amy, who has made a complete transformation, losing an extremely noticeable amount of weight since her surgery, putting her well on her way to becoming a mom like she always dreamed of. Season 1 ends on an extremely positive note, with Tammy having found love and well on the way to getting her surgery, and Amy being a success story. I think the reason they wrapped it up like this is because they didn't expect to get a season 2, but numerous moments from the show would go viral, causing it to be swiftly renewed and leading us to Season 2. Season 2 opens with us checking back in on the sisters 4 months after Amy's surgery, and she's lost over 100 pounds. But Tammy's progress was little to none. It seemed like she had fallen off the wagon in between seasons, and the public was very critical of her during this time. These were the days of Amy being the good sister, and I don't think that helped. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows for Amy. After being constipated for over a week, Michael would take her into the urgent care, as she was complaining of stomach pains and she only had the surgery 4 months ago. But at the checkup, Amy would discover that she's pregnant, despite being told that she needs to wait about 2 years before conceiving. And it doesn't take long for Tammy to develop some jealousy towards Amy's new situation. She says that she's happy for her, but tired of hearing about the goddamn baby already. In a weird way, I think that Tammy was afraid of being replaced, knowing that Michael and Amy were needed for daily tasks. But she also had something to be positive about: her new boyfriend, Jerry. During a visit with her sister Misty, Tammy would explain that her and Jerry have been going steady for a while, talking about the great time that they had in Atlanta last year. And Misty seems mostly supportive. She's what I consider to be one of the most level-headed members of the family, one who doesn't have some crazy character arc where they change significantly, just kind of always being there as the voice of reason. During the visit, Misty also encourages Tammy to exercise by walking from her front porch to the mailbox, and Tammy does attempt it but can't make it all the way, needing Misty to rush and get her a chair. Despite this attempt, her weight loss has not been going well, and this would be proven during a family barbecue hosted by her brother Chris. Chris is almost like the father of the family. He's usually trying to do his best to help his sisters, but has his own problems as well and wants to embark on a weight loss journey of his own. Well, during the barbecue, Chris noticed that Tammy wasn't sticking to her diet, so he decided to pull the scale out to see what Tammy was currently weighing, and she came in at just under 600 pounds, up almost 50 since her last appointment. Tammy was making the opposite of progress, and the end of episode 1 did not set a good precedent for the rest of the season. Episode 2 begins with Amy, Mike, Tammy, and Chris loading up for their trip to Atlanta, something that's become a mainstay of the show in the first 2 seasons. And along the way, they stop at a petting zoo, and their brother Chris is really struggling pushing her around in the wheelchair. By the end of it, he's completely exhausted, and Tammy is upset because she was unable to walk at any point during the visit. It seemed like the only 2 people that had fun were Amy and Michael. But that wouldn't last long, because during their next meal, Chris would scold Amy about her diet choices, and she would start weeping, claiming that it's the baby that wants the food, not her, taking zero accountability. And when they met with Dr. Proctor, he wasn't thrilled either. He had advised Amy to wait 2 years for conceiving a child due to safety, and that this surgery along with her weight could cause complications, stressing that Amy needs to stay on the diet for her and her child. But it's nothing in comparison to how much he scolds Tammy, who has gained back every pound that she lost 4 months ago. The doctor said that Tammy was starting from scratch, in more ways than one, because he could no longer see her as a patient, referring her to a doctor that was much closer for more consistent care. He would also say that Tammy had an 80% chance of passing away in the next 5 years because of her weight and the health complications that it brought. Tammy is of course devastated, but hopeful that the new doctor will work out. The next episode picks up after the appointment, with Chris and Tammy having a healthy breakfast, and Chris agreeing agreeing to join Tammy in her weight loss journey, doing this not only to encourage himself to lose weight, but Tammy as well. And they are taking steps in the right direction, with Tammy even attending therapy like she was recommended. But the first visit wasn't off to a good start. Chris struggled to push Tammy up the wheelchair ramp, his shoes even popping off in the process.
Stop it! My shoe came off.
And things weren't any better when they got into the office. Amy and Tammy get into a fight almost immediately, with Amy making a very familiar accusation. She claims that Tammy will threaten to call the police if she doesn't get her the food that she wants. This is something that Stephen Assanti would do. I've also got a video on him if you're interested, which is far shorter and has a far sadder ending. The therapist explains that Tammy is shutting down and not talking because she feels like she's not heard. But other than this, very little progress is made. And the rest of the episode consists of Amy's ultrasound visits, ending on a cliffhanger where Tammy gets a dramatic call from Amy claiming that she doesn't feel right and she's in severe pain. And the next episode opens with her being released from the hospital. And then Amy would explain what happened to Tammy. She said that she ate Chinese food for breakfast and dinner, causing her blood pressure to spike, claiming she doesn't even remember calling Tammy. We gotta keep in mind that Amy was recommended not to get pregnant for multiple years after this surgery, not only for the child's safety, but for her own. So it's not shocking that after overeating, she is in severe pain. But this isn't the first or the last time that Amy would put herself before her children. After all of that's settled, Amy and Tammy have a spa day, which was relatively uneventful, but I had to show you this picture. Then we cut to Amy taking out Tammy's trash, discovering a giant bag of candy wrappers. And in my opinion, this is when Tammy really starts to fall off the wagon. In season 1, she made minimal progress, but at least it was progress. In season 2, she is legitimately going backwards. And I can't help but feel like Jerry had something to do with it, but we'll get there. As Chris and Tammy are loading up for their next appointment, Chris can visibly see that Tammy has not been sticking to her diet, and he's concerned about what the doctor will have to say when they meet him. When they make it to the appointment, Chris tells the doctor that he is very interested in getting the surgery himself, revealing that he's already lost 20 pounds in the process. And the doctor basically tells him that if he keeps this up, next time he'll be approved. I really wish the same could have been said for Tammy, because this next weigh-in is probably one of the most devastating of the show. Tammy was given the goal of losing 50 pounds in a month to qualify for surgery, something that seems unachievable but is very possible for someone of her size. And Tammy did have a 50-pound weight difference in the opposite direction, coming in at around 644 pounds, up almost 50 in the last 30 days. Her brother was just about as shocked as everyone else. It seemed like Tammy wasn't even trying. In fact, she was actively working against her diet, and you could just feel the disappointment radiating from Chris, who was on track to be the second Slayton sibling to get the surgery even before Tammy. The doctor was also disappointed, but still kept Tammy on as a patient, claiming that she would now have to lose 100 pounds before they could even discuss the surgery, and Chris is given the goal of 15 more pounds, due to the 20 he already lost. The doctor's visit went terribly, but things weren't about to get better, not in season 2, because Tammy would then be informed by Amy and Michael that they were moving out of the duplex that they shared, and into a new home. Tammy claimed that she couldn't care less, but this was her face the entire time. She was visibly pissed. She has long since felt abandoned by Amy, and I think that she's been taking a lot of these emotions out in her eating. But as they always do, the sisters would move past this, and go over to Tammy's to start decorating for Halloween. But during the process, Tammy gets a call from Jerry, who tells them that he's coming to visit soon. And then Tammy goes to get herself dolled up. up. She's extremely excited for this. Jerry seems to be the one light in her life at this moment in time. It is very rare to see her happy otherwise. But Jerry is a double-edged sword. This man is devious, and when he finally arrives, we get to meet the legend. The producers ask him how he met Tammy, and he confirms the story that they met in a chat room for BBW women and the people who love them. Shortly after arriving, Jerry would go to meet Mike and Amy, eventually revealing that he has 6 kids and 5 grandkids, to the shock of Amy and Michael. Then the producers start getting on to Jerry for having something crumply in his pocket that's interfering with the mic, and he pulls a grocery bag full of fun-sized candy out of his waistband.
Is it sugar-free?
Nope.
This is exactly when people knew what Jerry was all about. He didn't want Tammy to get healthy, and I really think he was a big reason that she had been going in the opposite direction, that she wanted to maintain her figure for Jerry's liking. Jerry is a goddamn menace, and he's nowhere near done yet. Next, they all go out shopping for Halloween costumes, and the entire time Michael is still pushing Amy, because Jerry is physically incapable. The family would also note that he didn't even try. I really feel for Michael in situations like this. They talk about how he has a bad back from pushing Tammy around, and I could definitely see it. After picking out their costumes, later that night they would all go on a hayride, and during the trip there, their older sister Misty would start interrogating Jerry on his intentions with Tammy. When Tammy was asked if she could really see a future with Jerry, she of course responded yes, but Jerry said maybe. It's so very obvious that he's just here to hook up with Tammy for a few days and then bounce. And after the hayride, they continue to grill Jerry, claiming that they don't want him to stand in the way of her weight loss journey. And I can almost say without a doubt that this man was. I still can't get over that bag of candy. It seems like the family really doesn't like Jerry. I can't blame them. Almost every sibling has called him out on his bullshit, and a couple days later, Chris would be the next one to do so, telling him that if she doesn't lose weight, she could very well pass, and that he believes Jerry is enabling her with junk food. All of which is true. Fun fact about Jerry, and I guess slight spoilers, he's married. All those kids he has are from his wife, who had no idea he was doing any of this until after the second season of 1,000-Pound Sisters premiered. There would even be claims that Tammy knew Jerry was married, but just didn't care. So if you needed any more reassurance that Jerry was just there to party, the guy is actively cheating on his wife on national television, and then the next day he leaves. But this isn't the last time that we're gonna see our favorite man with the Trinidad shirt. No, he'll be back in a couple weeks. He's just gotta go back home to his wife. Amy claims that she is extremely worried about Tammy's weight loss progress, telling a story about how one time they dropped her off 32 pre-prepared meals, and that Tammy had eaten through every last one in 2 days. She's not very stoked about exercise either. Amy brought over a VR headset, hoping that it would spice up some of Tammy's mobility, and it backfired, with Tammy raging, performing minimal exercise. And not really much happens during the rest of the episode besides Amy and Tammy meeting a psychic who gives them very broad predictions, like that one day Tammy will get married, and that Amy has bad spirits in her house. We also get to see Chris and Tammy work with a personal trainer, and this time Tammy puts in actual effort, to Chris and everyone watching's surprise. But the episode would once again end on a cliffhanger with Amy being rushed to the hospital for not feeling well. She's diabetic, she just had the surgery months earlier, she's extremely high risk, so they rush her to the hospital. But as the next episode opens, it's revealed that there's nothing really wrong with Amy. She's not having the kid. She just really needs to take it easy in the following weeks to prevent an early childbirth. And then we jump forward a couple of weeks to them going to have Gage, their first son, and the C-section went great with no complications. Jerry would also be down to visit Tammy and support her during these times. Eventually, Tammy and Jerry call Amy to see the baby, and once again Tammy has this attitude about her. I think seeing Amy do so much since getting the surgery is bothering her, and it leads to this vicious cycle of her just eating more. But it also could have been that Tammy just wasn't feeling good, and the episode would end with her being rushed to the ER with extreme shortness of breath, and she would spend 2 weeks in the hospital with not only pneumonia, but also COVID, requiring her to be hooked up to an oxygen tank for the rest of the season. And after returning home, her and Chris would have a video call with the doctor, who wanted to check in on their weights. Chris would only lose about 6 pounds, which wasn't terrible, but wasn't amazing, and his goal would be kept, having to only lose a couple of more pounds to be approved. And Tammy would weigh 21 pounds more than last time. Going in the opposite direction once again, her goal was to lose 25 pounds. Tammy would openly admit that she has an eating problem and doesn't know how to stop, and also agrees to go back to therapy. But then Jerry comes back, and I think all progress is once again thrown out the window. Tammy would eventually confront Jerry about all the snack foods that he brings around, claiming it's extremely hard for her to be on a diet when he does that, but Jerry says he doesn't care because he's not the one trying to lose weight. They're trying to paint this as Jerry brings his own snacks around and Tammy just steals them, but I don't think anyone believes that. But things are going much better for their brother Chris, who during the next visit to the doctor achieved his goal weight and was approved for surgery, on the condition that he stopped smoking. But the outlooks for Tammy were much more grim. The siblings revealed that they had purchased 2 burial plots for Tammy. It actually wasn't their siblings that bought them, it was their mom, who once again has already written Tammy off. And with her going in the opposite direction, I can't blame them. So many people didn't think that Tammy would make it to season 3, let alone turn her entire life around. But I think a big obstacle right now for her was Jerry. Her brother Chris knew this, and would confront her during a dinner about it. And Tammy was pretty confrontational, but Chris said that if she didn't start making the right progress, he would write her off too. And the season ends with Tammy telling the audience that she's ready to live life normally again, that she will be admitting herself to a nursing facility, and that her and Jerry will be taking a break. But the end credits would reveal that due to her size, Tammy was still seeking a proper nursing facility. This season ended on a much sadder note. The end of season 1 was upbeat. Amy had just gotten surgery, Tammy was well on her way, and everything was great. But Tammy made massive steps backwards, gaining almost 100 pounds. I really feel like this was fueled by 2 things: her feelings about Amy and her other siblings moving on with their lives, and of course Jerry, who seemed to be actively contributing to her gains. Thankfully, we would never see Jerry again. It wasn't revealed on the show, but people found out that he was married. His wife, in particular, found out that he was getting up to this. I can only imagine what happened when she saw this. No one's seen anything of him since. Despite Jerry's departure in season 3, nothing slows down. In fact, this is arguably one of the most difficult seasons for Tammy. Season 3 would open on a little bit more of a positive note. Tammy saying that she's been accepted into a rehab facility. She says that she feels like she's at her worst and she's nervous about being so far away from her family. But her and Chris still make the trip. Tammy would also reveal that her and Jerry had broken up because Jerry didn't want to marry her, completely brushing over a good chunk of what the public already knew, that Jerry already had a wife, who had 5 of his children. To my knowledge, that is the last mention of Jerry. The show shifts its focus to Tammy's stay in rehab, which initially starts out positive, but as time drags on and the exercises get more difficult, Tammy starts to falter. And their brother Chris wasn't doing much better, getting a nasty infection in his leg that left him bedridden, contributing to him gaining 45 pounds. Overall, the family had taken significant steps backwards since season 2, where most of them did the same. And just as soon as Tammy started making real progress, she decided to leave the rehab facility, much to the disappointment of her family. Tammy would only spend 2 months there, claiming saying that she now felt confident enough to return home. Chris is pissed, especially when Tammy starts asking about getting a cheeseburger, and it becomes pretty clear that she left this rehab facility to continue in her addictions. Because season 3 is Tammy's party girl era, Amy will eventually have one, but for now the show is trying to paint her as a decent mother. But Tammy is about to go wild, and it almost costs her her life. Amy would be the one responsible for Tammy when she returned home from the rehab facility, and from the jump things were rough. Amy and Tammy were not getting along, and they would get into a big fight when Tammy was filming a YouTube video of her burning some of the things that Jerry had left around her home, when Amy came outside and started asking her questions about her prescription, and Tammy was pissed that Amy just couldn't handle it.
You can call your medicine in. I can't do it, Amy! Shut the up! Get the house!
Tammy would eventually call the pharmacist, but ended up going off on them, hanging up the phone assuming that Amy would handle it later. In my opinion, these are some of Tammy's darkest days. In terms of both her attitude and her health, she was just as much of a menace as Jerry at this point, and I think that was spurred on by the incredible pain of living the way that she did. A prime example of Tammy's bad attitude is during a family barbecue when Amy explains that Tammy probably needs a live-in nurse, or at least someone other than her to come by and assist, but Tammy claims she don't need no goddamn babysitter, and that her family should stop treating her like an animal, causing Amy to storm off. Tammy would take to YouTube to voice her frustrations with Amy, calling her a garbage piece of shit, claiming that a nurse could do a far better job than her anyways. And maybe it did her some good, because when Chris went to check in on her, her fridge was filled with healthy foods, and after doing a home weigh-in, it was revealed that they'd each lost around 10 pounds, so they celebrated with Mexican food. And the episode would end with Tammy confiding in her niece Emily that she had a new boyfriend, whose name was Philip, but he also goes by another name, the BBW King. Emily is of course concerned. At the beginning of season 3, episode 3, we get introduced to Tammy's new nurse, Tisa, and they almost immediately get into an argument. Tammy claiming that nothing in her fridge made sense to eat, and that Amy didn't buy the right stuff, but Tisa manages to calm her down and they cook. So things are off to a decent start. After that, we get a little bit of an update on Tammy's new boyfriend, Philip, the BBW King. I might argue that this individual is worse than Jerry. Jerry did not have the audacity to call himself the king of all BBWs. I can only imagine what this man's intentions for Tammy are. Philip has publicly stated that he will not date a woman under 300 pounds. This man might as well be Super Jerry. And when Chris found out, he was pissed. He knew that this was another person that wasn't going to support Tammy's weight loss journey. In fact, it would be the opposite. I don't know what Tammy expected. She had pictures of the BBW King all over her Instagram. And I actually remember people talking about this in between seasons. I started watching around the end of season 2, and people didn't know if there was going to be a 3 until there were rumors of Tammy dating some guy called the BBW King. And now, here we are. Tammy's siblings would confront her about her new boyfriend in person, and Tammy said that Philip wasn't making her gain any weight, so Chris asked her to step on the scale and prove it. Tammy refuses to weigh herself, and Chris storms out. Tammy reveals to her sister that she doesn't want to get under 300 pounds so that Philip will still like her, and this causes Misty to leave. The next episode begins with Tammy visiting Amy and Gage, which is relatively uneventful besides a little bit of talk about Philip. But when Tammy gets home, she absolutely blows up on Tisa, all because Tisa tried to encourage her to get up and walk to the mailbox, claiming that she's gonna have to work harder if she wants to make any progress to show Dr. Smith. Then we cut to Tammy and Chris loading up for their next appointment. Chris would weigh in at 414, putting him well above his goal of 400 pounds. The doctor says that he's still approved, but he needs to get under 400 before they they can operate. And Tammy had gained weight, around 15 pounds since leaving rehab. It almost seemed like Tammy had gotten used to this. Back in season 1, when she would go in and get denied, it devastated her, but now it was just part of the average. Go into the doc, they tell you you've gained weight, say you should go to therapy, you don't, and all of it repeats in a month. It would take her many years and a lot of struggle to change. But I've talked a lot about Tammy recently. We've almost discussed nothing going on with Amy this season, and it's mainly because the majority of what they film with her is content of her and her family, which is relatively wholesome and not of interest to this video. But Amy definitely had her moments in season 3. The main one I can think of is the cleaning of her home. Amy and Mike would hire professional cleaners to go through all of their stuff, claiming they just didn't have any time since Gage was born and the house was out of control. But it was a lot worse than she was leading on. There were a lot of dirty dishes, a shriveled up mouse in the top of the cupboard, and tons of just clutter. Amy says that all of this makes her feel like a bad mom because of the mice, cockroaches, and filthy living space. Mike doesn't really see the problem in it. He thinks everyone lives this way, and they've had this problem for a long time, just never on national television.
And I try so hard not to show them in my videos and stuff, and then y'all see them, and it's just hard.
Amy has had roaches crawling in the background of her videos for years. She claims that she's tried to hide them, but doesn't do a very good job. If she knew about them for so long, I don't know why she didn't do anything. And the way the show made it seem in the first 2 seasons, they didn't have any of these problems. But I guess they needed a little bit of something from Amy to spice things up. All of the filming of her having a perfect family and working on herself was getting boring to the viewers. And make no mistake, Amy was taking a lot of steps backward herself. She was no longer losing weight, and her house was an absolute disaster. Eventually, the house was a lot cleaner, but I didn't hear any talk of getting pest control. Then see a conversation between Amy and Tammy. Tammy says that she's been thinking about going to Vegas to see her new boyfriend Philip. And Amy doesn't even see how that's physically possible, because they live in Kentucky and Tammy is too big to fly. Tammy says she hasn't thought it through quite yet, but she'll get there. And I think it highlights her impulsiveness during season 3 perfectly. She has zero regards for the future. I think at this point she had written herself off. The next big thing of note to happen would be Tisa and Tammy going swimming. Tammy really enjoyed swimming as a form of exercise, as it took a lot of the pressure off of her joints. And Tisa was scared to death of the water because she couldn't swim. So it was a pretty interesting dynamic to see. And they would have a lot of fun. But on the way back, Tisa would ask Tammy to walk to the car, and Tammy would refuse, causing them to get into a big argument, Tammy claiming that Tisa knew this was part of her job. Tammy and Tisa's relationship would continue to fracture with time, once again reminding me of Stephen Asante and his caretaker, who I believe was named Princess. I'm really hoping that I got that name right. The next episode opens with a visit from our favorite motivational speaker, Darlene Slayton, who comes over to tell Tammy that she better leave that damn pizza alone, and that she expects to hear that she'll lose weight at the next appointment with Dr. Smith. It's been 3 seasons, and I don't think I've seen this woman smile. I didn't know that this amount of judgment could be contained in one human being. But we then get one of Darlene's first human moments in the entire show. She gets emotional after hearing Tammy's caretaker Tisa say that she doesn't want to have to bury her, and Darlene agrees, fearing that she will have to do the same. I'm no psychologist, but I think this family has a very unhealthy way of dealing with their emotions. This is proof that Darlene does care about her children, and a good possibility of why the way she acts that she does is she thinks it may help them. She is turning that pain and worry about Tammy into anger towards her. It's all very sad, at least at this point in the show. Like I said, everyone had already written Tammy off, and she would prove everyone so wrong, but the worst was yet to come. Nothing more of note would happen in this episode except for Tammy saying that her and Philip had broken up because he wasn't motivating her to lose the weight. But don't worry folks, this is not the last time that we've heard from the BBW King. The other big thing is the weigh-in, and for the first time, Dr. Smith is not happy with Tammy. She has lost nor gained any pounds. This means that she's not been walking the required steps that he gave for her, or sticking to the diet plan. He said that she could have easily lost the weight if she simply stuck to that. Chris weighed in at 408, but Dr. Smith still approved him for the surgery, even though he was 8 pounds heavier than he was supposed to be. Chris is told to report in the morning for the surgery. After wanting it for 11 years, he accomplished his goal, making him the second Slayton sibling to undergo the procedure. And his surgery went without any complications, except for the doctor noting that he had an enlarged liver, which to my knowledge never became a problem. When he was out of surgery, Chris said that he was in quite a bit of pain, which is understandable being as they removed over 80% of his stomach. His family is of course very happy for him, and this will be life-changing for Chris in future seasons. We then cut back to Tammy, who is talking about the situation with her ex-boyfriend Philip. She claims that Philip has been harassing her, so she's had to get the police involved, calling her a bunch and having his friends call her. And she said due to the stress of all this, she quit the diet. And with some of the things she claimed Philip said, I can see why she was scared. You've got to be a maniac to publicly call yourself the BBW King. Lord only knows what this man is capable of. The next episode, we jump ahead 1 month after Chris's surgery. We get a check-in at his doctor's and he's down around 25 pounds, which is great, and Chris would continue to make progress on his weight throughout the seasons. But Tammy weighs in around 650, gaining 10 pounds since the last time, and this has become the norm for Tammy. She just expects the doctor to say, see you again in a month, but this time he says, no, I'm gonna see you again when you've made major progress, basically saying that this had been a waste of his time. Tammy is bummed, so they take her to do some activities that she enjoys, and then everyone loads up to go on a road trip for a family vacation. The purpose of this trip was to keep an eye on Tammy, help her with the weight loss, and have a good time. But as soon as they arrived, the problems started. Tammy was too afraid to use the ramp that was set up for her to get into the cabin, causing her to once again crash out.
We just want you to go in.
I don't want to go in.
Tammy absolutely refused to go into the house, and after waiting in the car for 2 hours, they decided to send Michael to get her a hotel. The next day, they do a surprise visit to Tammy's hotel to try and get her to stay on the family trip, but she is immediately pissed, and also most likely on the phone with her ex-boyfriend Philip, reconciling. And the siblings are of course mad, but not too rough on Tammy. They really want her to stay, but she inevitably leaves when a family friend named Robert comes to pick her up. But as he's loading her into the car, they try one more time to get her to stay, but she refuses, and the family would enjoy the rest of the vacation without her. But when they return, Amy and Michael have their own bad news for Tammy. They inform her that they will finally be moving out of the duplex and into their new home. Tammy is clearly not happy about it. She says that she is, but her face tells a different story. It also could just be that Tammy's hungover. She would tell the viewers that she's been partying a lot with her friends, drinking, smoking, all kinds of stuff. Stuff that people with severe medical issues hooked up to an oxygen tank probably shouldn't be doing. She's also completely given up on her diet, eating whatever she wants, and she keeps this up for weeks. Tammy is so out of control that during Chris's next appointment with the doctor, she refuses to go, and during this phone call she sounded terrible. Her voice was extremely raspy. Despite Tammy not attending, Chris's appointment went well, with the surgery being of great help to him. But it seemed like Tammy had all but given up on her hopes of getting it herself, and Tammy is in very rough shape. She's extremely short of breath, she can barely talk, even refusing to go into Amy's new home because it would just be too much, looking at it from the outside during her and her mother's visit. I also want to add that Darlene didn't go into the home either. there just couldn't be bothered. It's also revealed during this trip that Amy is trying to get pregnant again, against the advice of her doctors. Keep in mind, she's still supposed to wait a couple of years before even having one kid after this surgery. And during Amy's next appointment with Dr. Proctor, he tells her the same, also telling her that she's not at the weight that she should be post-surgery, also advising her to lose more weight before proceeding with a planned pregnancy. But despite the advice of medical professionals, they still attempt to conceive, Amy being visibly sad when her pregnancy test comes up negative. It don't look like it bothered Mike much. And things are not much better on the Tammy front. Chris would confront her about her drinking, and Tammy was pretty open about accepting this had become a problem, even claiming that she was ready to return to rehab. And that's exactly what she did, claiming that this would be the last time that we saw her at this size. But the next day, Tammy took a turn for the worst and stopped breathing. She was put in the ICU and in a medically induced coma for 4 days, put on a ventilator and eventually given a tracheotomy to further assist with getting oxygen to her lungs. The season would end with Chris revealing that Tammy gets out in 3 weeks and that she would later return to rehab, losing close to 115 pounds during her stay in the hospital, ending season 3 on a somewhat positive, somewhat negative note. That was almost the end of Tammy. If she would have been home alone and not in rehab, where people were monitoring her, that very well could have been it. But thankfully, we got 4 more seasons of this. Season 4 opens with Tammy showing us her new trach and explaining her stay in the hospital. When Tammy arrived nearly lifeless, she was 717 pounds, the largest she had ever weighed in at. After meeting with Dr. Smith, it would be revealed that she's around 620 pounds after her stay in the hospital, losing a significant amount of weight during her medically induced comas. Dr. Smith says that he wants her at 550 before they can discuss the surgery, putting Tammy within a very real striking distance of her goal. And for the first time in half of a season, Tammy is motivated to lose weight. Amy also had some pretty big news that she and Michael were pregnant, and just like she did during the first pregnancy, she uses it as an excuse to cheat on her diet, once again defying the advice of medical professionals. During the premiere, we also get an update on older brother Chris, who has probably been the greatest Slayton success story so far, losing 95 pounds since his surgery. Pretty sure he quit smoking too. Absolutely amazing progress from Chris. But once again, the episode would end with medical problems from Tammy. Nurses would rush into her room at 3 a.m. because she had stopped breathing. It was just mucus that had clogged her trach, but still incredibly dangerous and scary. It's becoming increasingly clear that Tammy is now reliant on this trach to survive, and it will be many years before she has it removed. The next episode opens with Amy once again being scolded by a medical professional. The doctor tells her that her diet could cost the baby and says that it's important that she gets back on track with her weight loss. But like I talked about in the past, Amy uses her pregnancies as an excuse to cheat on her diet to the max, which wouldn't be a problem at all if it wasn't Amy and she had been advised by numerous doctors not to do this. It really just boils down to Amy being a selfish person, at least in my eyes. If you don't see it now, it will become much more apparent in later seasons. I have the luxury of hindsight on all of this. After the doctor's visit, we cut to Amy and Tammy's sister, Amanda, who's going to be taking a much more front and center role this season, and she's talking about her recent divorce with Michael's brother, blaming it on her recent weight gain and telling her sister Misty that she wants to get back into the gym, making her the 4th Slayton sibling to join in on this weight loss journey. After that, we see the family pack up to visit Tammy in rehab, who is looking noticeably slimmer, weighing in at around 573 pounds, losing 144 since getting her trach. She's only about 20 pounds off from meeting the goal the doctor set. This might just be the closest she has ever been to getting the surgery, and the family is of course extremely proud of her. Tammy's even been meeting more with the therapist, mainly because Dr. Proctor made it a requirement of getting the surgery, but they seem to be making some real progress, or at least that's what everyone thought, because during Tammy's next weigh-in at rehab, she was up to 583 pounds, gaining 10 since her last weigh-in, and for the first time since going to the hospital, gaining. This, of course, discouraged Tammy. She was less than 20 pounds away from her goal of getting the surgery, and for the first time she was slipping back. She remembers another time years ago when she tried to get the surgery and was 9 pounds away, but claims something always goes wrong. After checking in with Tammy, we get a devastating piece of news, that the Slayton's iconic dog, Little Bit, had passed away. Personally, I think Little Bit is one of the cutest dogs to ever grace television, and one of the only members of the Slayton family that I have absolutely nothing against. Rest in peace. When Tammy was told about Little Bit's passing, she was sad but didn't show much emotion, which was honestly shocking because I know Tammy loved that dog. I think that her lukewarm reaction is a byproduct of her already knowing and them just needing this scene filmed for the show. I also think that Tammy was going through a lot. Her visits with the therapist had devolved into Tammy just ignoring her, especially when questioned on topics of weight gain. And since it was a video call, Tammy would just hang up on her. And you know the saying, when it rains, it pours. Because the next thing we're going to talk about is Tammy's house getting broken into while she was at rehab. Amanda and Misty would go over to Tammy's house one day and noticed the front door was cracked open and that there were valuables missing. My assumption is that one of those wonderful friends that Tammy was partying with caught wind that she was either in the hospital or rehab and decided to do a little bit of redecorate. They took almost everything that she owns, including her dresser and all her clothes. From the looks of it, they took damn near everything. I bet this process took a couple days, but things were finally starting to look up in the weight loss department, because during her next weigh-in, Tammy had once again lost weight, putting her a mere 10 pounds away from her goal of getting the surgery. And after that, we get to check in with Amy, who is just as dramatic as ever. She's decided to name her second child, who is a boy, Glenn, after one of her favorite characters on The Walking Dead. She has this horror theme going with her children's names. Her first kid is named after the little boy from Pet Sematary, possibly one of the most terrifying children in all of media. How he took out that old man at the end haunts me. But speaking of stabbing pains, that's what Amy was experiencing, so she would have to be rushed to the ER, claiming that she might be having the baby early at 8 months. But it turned out that once again, Amy just had a really bad indigestion. Remember when she went to the ER during her first pregnancy over eating too much Chinese food? Extremely similar situation here. She has gained weight throughout season 3 and 4, and it's because of behavior like this that the surgeons set the weight loss goals. If you continue to overeat after your surgery, you can stretch your stomach back out, and it's terrible for you. Amy is currently doing what we in the business call beating the surgery, but not only at the risk of her life, but her new child's. After finding out that yet again Amy was okay, Amanda and Misty would go meet Tammy to tell her her apartment had been robbed. And Tammy takes it surprisingly well. But before her siblings leave, she wants to weigh in front of them, because I think she knew that she had made enough progress to qualify for the surgery. And she had, weighing in at around 534 pounds, beating her goal weight of 550 and being down nearly 200 pounds. Tammy was well on her way to completely changing her life. And the next episode begins with her getting approved for surgery by Dr. Smith, telling her that all she needs now is approval from her therapist and to meet some other physicians to make sure she's okay for surgery. Tammy then calls her whole family to tell them the same, and they're all very happy for her too. The next big thing to happen would be the birth of Amy's second child, Glenn. She was very emotional about the whole thing, feeling insecure about people thinking she's a bad mom. Made only worse when Michael got sick and was kicked out of the hospital, leaving her and the newborn alone alone for a couple of days. The show mainly focuses around Amy's family life, which is relatively uneventful, so I've skipped over most of that. And when Michael was finally better, Amy came home to the house being a wreck. She was pissed, and this was one of the first times that she actually talked bad about her husband Mike. Like I said, for the first few seasons they paint Mike as the perfect guy, but now Amy was saying that she feels like she has to raise the two kids alone, needing much more help from Michael. There is definitely a tension building, made only worse by a family cookout, where the kids were having an absolute meltdown about God knows what, they're just being kids. And while Amy's trying to console them, Michael is just sitting there watching, eating a heaping plate of food. This upset Amy, who already felt like Michael wasn't helping with the boys. Her sister Amanda agrees, saying that Mike needs to be a better dad. After that, we see Tammy loading up in an ambulance to go to some of her final doctor's appointments, which goes pretty well. And when Dr. Smith sees the results, he feels comfortable approving Tammy for weight loss surgery, which is scheduled in 2 days. When asked if she would be attending her own daughter's surgery, Darlene said no, and that someone had to watch her babies, meaning her dogs. Amy makes it very clear that there's someone that can do it for her, but she still refuses. Tammy is super nervous about this surgery. She says one of her fears is not waking back up, and the rest of her family is concerned too. Despite the massive amount of weight that Tammy has already lost, she is still at high risk during this surgery, and during it they're going to be removing over 80% of her stomach. But everything ended up going great. Tammy would have to stay in the hospital for another 2 days, and then in a hotel nearby for a week, until she could return to rehab for a month, and then hopefully home. She had finally done it after 4 seasons, and years of back and forth. She would be the third Slayton sibling to get the weight loss surgery, and this would be the beginning of great progress for Tammy, who we check back in on 4 weeks later. She's been spending a lot of time working out and has lost 40 pounds since the surgery, and this qualified her to go back home. But Chris would get a call on the way to go pick her up that Tammy had a pretty nasty trach infection, and that she'd need to stay at rehab longer to fix it. Tammy wants out of rehab, but the family is concerned that if she does return home, she could go backwards, settling on encouraging her to stay. But Tammy refuses, letting them know during a phone call.
You're not listening to me. You come here, be a resident.
With a lot of convincing and a lack of care back at home 24/7, Tammy decides to stay at the rehab facility, and I think this was a really good decision. Tammy said that she would stay until she could get her trach removed and recovered a bit more from the surgery, and I think Tammy would be happy that she ended up staying, because she would soon introduce us to her friend, Caleb, a man struggling with similar problems who was inspired by Tammy to come to rehab. Caleb's a pretty chill guy, and him and Tammy hit it off. Soon after, Tammy would announce that they were dating, and her brother Chris wasn't really thrilled. Tammy didn't really have the best track record with men, but I can confidently say that Caleb is much better than the BBW King and Jerry. It seemed like he actually loved Tammy for the person she was. Caleb also has his own struggles with his weight, claiming his heaviest was around 700 pounds, but that now he's around 480, and that he's excited to continue with his weight loss because he thinks that Tammy will make a great mother and wife, and he pops that question pretty quick. After 3 weeks of being together, Caleb proposes in the parking lot of their rehab center, and Tammy says yes. Not only has she just had a life-changing surgery, but now she's a fiancé. Season 4 is really where it all turns around, at least for Tammy, not for Amy. It only gets worse for Amy from here. Amy and her sister Amanda are coming down on Mike pretty hard. One clip in particular, which is absolutely hilarious, is when Amanda invites people over to decorate for fall, and she's ordering Mike around like some kind of dog, making him carry tons of stuff and telling him that he's moving too slow. I'm not gonna deny that Mike has a lazy streak in him, but this is also the man that pushed around Tammy, season 1 Tammy might I add, for for months anytime someone asked. We should also keep in mind that Amanda recently divorced Mike's brother, so I think there might be some resentment building between the Haltermans and the Slaytons. And during this visit, Tammy reveals to the family that her and Caleb are engaged. And of course they're shocked. They've only known each other for 3 weeks. None of them have met him, but Tammy says the wedding's in 2 weeks, and she hopes that they'll all be there. Tammy asks Amy to be the maid of honor, and for some reason, Amy reluctantly agrees. I think it's just because they haven't met Caleb, and when they meet him, they think he's a pretty nice guy. But Chris still gives Caleb the man-to-man talk, saying that he wants better for Tammy, and for them to do better together, telling him that he'd better not mess up. Everybody but Amanda seems to like Caleb. Amanda says that she just doesn't trust him, for like absolutely no reason. Personally, I think she was out here sabotaging Amy and now Tammy's relationships, or at least trying to. But despite some slight protest from her siblings, the wedding would go through, and both of them are incredibly happy. Tammy says she thought she was gonna pass away a year ago, and now she's here with her husband. Season 4 ended on an extremely positive note. Tammy had gotten the surgery, she was married. Many thought that this was the perfect ending, but there would be a season 5, and this season wouldn't be nearly as happy. We open with an update from Caleb and Tammy, who have now moved into the same room together since getting married. Both are working on continuing to lose weight so that they can leave the facility, and Tammy is making some real progress, even getting her trach removed, which was one of the last things keeping her in rehab. So after a 14-month stay in rehab, Tammy was finally approved to go home. But sadly, Caleb was not, as the doctor said he still needed his trach. They're both devastated, but Tammy still decides to leave rehab, claiming that she has wasted too much of her life already. When they finally said their goodbyes, it was a very emotional moment. Tammy said it's one of the hardest things she's ever had to do, and Caleb voiced his concerns that while she was out, she'd find someone better than him. During the process of Tammy leaving, we get some testimonies from other patients who say they're extremely inspired by Tammy's progress, and I can see why. It's been astonishing already. For the first time in 15 years, Tammy can fit in a regular car seat, no longer having to sit on the floor like she did for the first 4 seasons. Tammy is doing well, but unfortunately the rest of the family isn't. When Tammy returned home, Amy and Amanda got into a huge fight when Amanda made some negative comments about Amy's eyes. And Tammy is disappointed that her sisters are more concerned with arguing than her miraculous return home after almost a year and a half in rehab. It's kind of wild seeing an argument that Tammy isn't involved in. Since her surgery, she's been a lot more level-headed, but Amy is going in the opposite direction, becoming more and more emotional with each passing episode. I'm kinda kicking myself for not calling him episodies this whole time. Wasted opportunity, but I'll start now. As far as Caleb is concerned, things are not good. He admits that since Tammy has left, he's been doing a lot of emotional eating. To my knowledge, this rehab facility highly encourages diets, but can't prevent people from getting the foods they want. Caleb says that he doesn't know how to tell Tammy that he's fallen off the wagon, in part because he knows she'll be disappointed. I was really hoping that Tammy leaving rehab would have the opposite effect, but it's definitely understandable that he's missing his new wife and coping in the way that he's used to, through food. If Tammy was in his situation, she'd probably do the same, but I feel like she was just at a different point in her journey. The next big thing to happen would be a barbecue hosted by Tammy, and during this barbecue, Amy would get overwhelmed with the boys, saying that she feels like a single parent. Amanda would openly scold Michael for his bad parenting, and Michael agreed. I legitimately don't think he knew there was a problem, but it's all about to get so much worse. Amy says that she wants to go out with her sisters to shop, and Michael says that he wants to go with her, but Amy just wants to get away for a little while, and asks Mike for her cards out of his wallet. Michael refuses to give her these cards, and Amy threatens to kick him out of the house.
No, he's got 2 seconds to get out of my house. I'm taking one of the boys with me.
No.
Michael says that if she's kicking him out of the house, he's taking one of the boys then. And this makes things heat up even more, causing Tammy to call the police, as Michael and especially Amanda start to get into it.
Go ahead.
Put me out this mother. Do it.
For a minute there, I thought we were going to see Michael and Amanda throw down, but things calm down a little bit when Amy and Michael go to the side to talk in private. Amy tells Michael that she wants a divorce, and Michael says, and I quote, "Don't get divorced." And that's when the cops arrive. They question Michael, who tells them that he's not trying to keep her there, and Amy leaves with Tammy, Amanda, and Misty. And Amy goes to stay with Tammy for a couple of days. The divorce was serious. It ended up going through, and that was the last time that we saw Michael on 1,000-Pound Sisters. On a positive note, Tammy and Chris would have an appointment with Dr. Smith, who was joyous at their progress. Tammy now weighed 420 pounds, claiming to have not been that light since she was around 16 years old, and Chris weighed in just under 300, but was still denied for skin removal surgery, told that he would have to lose another 50 before they had those talks. We then cut over to Amy and Amanda, who are doing something pretty interesting. They would travel to the bank to access her and Mike's joint bank accounts, draining all but $1,000 from them. I think that I should point out that before the show, Mike was the only one in the household that had a legitimate job. I'm pretty sure Amy was collecting disability. I know that things aren't the best between them, but doing something like this is pretty scummy in my opinion. I could totally see it being Amanda's idea. Just one more chance to stick it to the Haltermans. We end this episode with a look at Dr. Smith and Caleb's first appointment. Sadly, Caleb is up 37 pounds since he started, putting him at around 537. The doctor tells him that he wants him around 500 before they operate, and that his road to recovery will be much longer because of his trach. Caleb then calls Tammy to break the bad news, and of course, she's disappointed. She really wants Caleb to get out of rehab so that he can come home and live with her, but feels that since she's left, he's been slipping back, encouraging him to keep trying and get back on track. Nothing much really happens in Season 5, Episode 4, besides Misty and Amanda both getting approved for weight loss surgeries of their own, and Amy going to a rage room to cope with the divorce. It ends with Amy meeting a lawyer to file for divorce, and comes out visibly upset, learning that Michael had filed first. She claims the reason she's upset is that Michael didn't try to win her back, even though she was legitimately going in that day to divorce him. He just beat her to the punch. Mike didn't fare too well in court though. We would find out in the next episode that Mike wanted a 50-50 custody split, and Amy only wanted 70-30, and I'm pretty sure all of it leaned heavily towards Amy. She got most everything. I think that Mike walked away with the TV. It's just absolutely crazy to me how quick this show switched up on him. Things are not much better on the Tammy front. Caleb would call her and reveal that he had to stay in the hospital for a week, and Tammy is pretty upset that Caleb didn't tell her, but they still plan for her to visit in the coming days. Before that, Tammy would visit an OB/GYN, claiming she thought she could be pregnant because she was craving weird things, mainly water, but the doctor quickly shoots down her dreams, telling her that it would be nearly impossible for her to be currently pregnant. She would then travel back to rehab to visit Caleb, who has sadly not been sticking to his diet, weighing himself in front of Tammy around 524 pounds, down just a little bit over 10 since his last appointment with the doc. Tammy's been in this exact same situation before, so she knows that Caleb has been hoarding junk food, finding a stash of them in his room. After finding them, she would confront him. She felt like he had given up, specifically telling him that this is a matter of his life, and he has almost no choice but to get healthy. But it seems that Caleb had fully fallen off the wagon. He would set up a candle-lit dinner for him and Tammy, but the food he brought was not at all healthy. Mozzarella sticks, mushrooms, chicken wings, all fried. And this dinner had the opposite of the intended effect. Tammy was pissed that Caleb was once again cheating on his diet, saying almost nothing to him during the dinner. And Amy isn't faring much better. During a Zumba dance class, Amy would break down in tears, telling the family that she hadn't used the bathroom in 2 weeks since stopping her medication. She also reveals that she's not been using her CPAP machine for reasons that she doesn't disclose. The family tells her that she needs to take care of herself so that she can take care of her boys. But she just shuts down in a scene very reminiscent of Season 3 Tammy. The next big thing to happen this season would be the family's trip to Florida, and Tammy riding on an airplane for the first time in her life. But the trip starts off rough for Amy, who has a meltdown when her kids are crying, something that's becoming increasingly frequent. Tammy, however, is having an amazing time, even getting a sand wheelchair so that she can see the beach for the first time in her life. But this vacation was about to take a turn for the worse. After eating dinner, Amy and Tammy get into an argument about how to put Gage to sleep, causing Amy to say that she's leaving. And when her sister Amanda approaches her to talk about it, Amy initiates a fight, which has to be broken up by the rest of the family.
Get the out of my face! Man, get your hands off of me!
After breaking them up, Chris blocks Amy off in the hallway, telling his sister that she's gonna have to leave in the morning. Amy accuses the family of never helping her, and this just pisses them off more. Eventually, Amy would apologize to all of her siblings, and it seemed like every one of them accepted the apology, except for Amanda, which is low-key understandable. Amy did start that shit. The vacation didn't go great, but a week after they returned home, things got much worse. Tammy would get a message from one of Caleb's friends at rehab saying that her husband Caleb had been found unresponsive and with no pulse. And an hour later, Tammy would get another text confirming the news that Caleb had tragically passed away on June 30th, 2023. Tammy is, of course, devastated by the news and would quickly plan a memorial service for Caleb. And at this memorial, Chris would recite a poem that Caleb had wrote for Tammy right after she had left rehab, and also release butterflies in his memory. And season 5 would end with the Slayton sisters lighting a lantern, while Tammy is talking about how much she misses Caleb, but that she will continue to stay motivated in her weight loss journey. Season 5 was an absolute roller coaster. Amy's divorce, the fight with Amanda, and then of course Caleb's passing. This is another one of those turning points in the Slayton family's lives. And despite her grief, Tammy will continue to make progress. I wish the same could be said for Amy, because Amy is about to make some really poor choices. Season 6 opens with the family visiting a farm, and we get a good look at Tammy, who is noticeably thinner and much more mobile than we've ever seen her, losing over 400 pounds since she arrived at rehab. She's at the point where she can take care of herself. For years, she needed people to help her with daily tasks, but now she's out of the wheelchair and highly motivated to continue to lose weight so that she can get skin removal surgery. She's also been incredibly active, engaging in a mower race with Chris. After beating Chris, she attempts to race Chris's wife, Brittany, and has trouble stopping the mower, causing her to have a little panic attack.
I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to.
Despite a couple of things being scary to her, Tammy has really been taking advantage of her new life. The only thing that she's not enjoying is Amy, who has been living with Tammy for the past 7 months. But eventually Amy would move back to her house, saying that it's hard to be there with everything that happened with Mike. I think the reason Amy was living with Tammy was so that she could help with the boys, because Amy has been out actively looking for a new man. We then cut to Chris and Tammy being weighed, weighed. Chris had around 35% body fat and weighed 297 pounds, saying that he's mad at himself because this means he gained a little weight. But Tammy did much better, coming in around 308 pounds, losing almost 100 pounds in the past 9 months. Her sister Misty is also doing extremely well post-surgery, losing around 80 pounds. Amanda also got the surgery but hasn't been making much progress. She tore her meniscus and ACL, so it's really limited her exercise options. But at the beginning of the next episode, we would get the exact details on every family member's progress, because they would all at once go to see Dr. Smith and each get weighed. First is Amy, who's down to 237 pounds, losing nearly 50 in a year's time, but she still doesn't qualify for skin removal surgery. Misty weighs in at 166 pounds and has seen such an improvement in her health that she no longer has to take medication for her diabetes. Amanda is 268 pounds, down less than 30 since the surgery. The doctor is disappointed in this progress, and Amanda blames it on a variety of things, from Amy's divorce to Caleb's passing. Brother Chris weighs in at around 299 pounds, and the doctor is also frustrated with his progress, because he's been hovering around the same weight for the past year. He is also denied skin removal surgery. And the final sibling to be weighed is Tammy, because everyone knows that she's made amazing progress. Tammy weighs in at around 303 pounds, down almost 120 since her last appointment, and over 400 pounds from her heaviest, which was around 725. Though her progress is amazing, she is also denied skin removal surgery, claiming that she'll have to lose around another 100 pounds before she can qualify. Tammy wasn't thrilled about this. She's been having a lot of trouble with her excess skin, but is still extremely motivated to continue. At this point, I don't think anything could have stopped her. After the appointment, we see a conversation between Tammy and Amy, with Amy expressing her desire to hit the bars and find love, which Tammy criticizes heavily. Tammy has become a lot more modest since her weight loss. Long gone is that party girl who hung out with the BBW King, replaced by a Tammy who would look down upon such actions. I also want to add that it makes sense that Amy is looking for love at a bar, for many reasons. And Tammy's not getting along with her other sister either. Amanda would tell Chris that her and Tammy were having issues. Tammy's been saying that Amanda's boys break her things and eat all of her food when they're over to visit, but we also have to keep in mind that this is Amanda's house. Since coming back from rehab, Tammy has been staying in an empty house that Amanda and her ex-husband occupied. Since their divorce, she has moved out, and since Tammy's return from rehab, she has moved in. So Amanda's boys still come over to the house for various reasons, and they do actually break shit and eat all of Tammy's food. This is a window that they shattered and didn't clean up. It seems like Tammy's main problem is that Amanda isn't saying anything to them, because legitimately everything Tammy's been talking about has proof. Sensing this growing rift, Chris would hold a family meeting, but shit immediately gets heated between Amanda and Amy. Chris wants to have a friendly competition of them all going to the gym and losing weight, seeing who can do the best, and Amy storms off crying, claiming that she doesn't want to be in any kind of competition. Right after, Amanda and Tammy begin to argue, with Amanda even threatening to kick Tammy out of her house. And Tammy absolutely roasts Amanda, basically calling her a slut, and Amanda doesn't take it very well. I think we might have seen another fight if Amanda's leg wasn't so messed up. She's definitely not afraid to get in your face about things, but I absolutely love this new attitude from Tammy. It seems like when she gets into an argument now, it's for a good reason, and not something extremely petty. The argument only gets worse when each sister proclaims that the other is dead to them, and Tammy claims that she will never let Amanda hold the house over her head again, expressing her desire to move out of Kentucky. Amanda says that if Tammy wants to continue to stay in her house, then she needs to apologize, but Tammy refuses, saying that she'll be moving out soon. Mysteriously enough, Amy decides that she wants to make amends with everyone, and the the way she's gonna do it is making them all a meal, a dish of her own creation, called white chocolate shrimp Alfredo, and it looks like cat vomit. Amy claims the reason she's making this is a test of loyalty from her family. They've always ripped on her for her cooking, so to make amends, she wants them to try it. The paranoid in me makes me think she tampered with this. I'm sorry, but just me, I'm not going to accept food or any kind of water from someone I just got into a crazy argument with, especially someone who has mysteriously dropped it. All I gotta do is eat this. No way. If this was my sister, I'd let her hate me for the rest of my life. There is no way I am trusting chocolate shrimp Alfredo made by Amy Slate, even if it hasn't been tampered with. But I guess Tammy's a better sibling than me. She would try it and not like it, claiming it had a mysterious tang, and Amy was absolutely giddy that she even tried it, and then whipped up a batch to take to Amanda. Amanda actually loves the white chocolate shrimp Alfredo, and Amy bursts into tears, once again citing how no one in the family thought she could cook. The episode would end with a discussion between Chris and his wife. Chris says that he wants to move Tammy into a house next door that they just purchased, and Brittany reluctantly agrees, saying she just doesn't want any problems with Tammy to come from this. And then Chris gives Tammy a tour around her lovely new home. It needs a lot of work, but Tammy loves it, planning to move in after renovations are done in 30 days. We then see Chris and Tammy go get some exercise, in the form of golfing, and after she's convinced to get over her newly acquired fear of driving, Tammy has a blast whipping around the golf cart. It's crazy to think that a couple of years ago she wouldn't have been able to even set in one of these, let alone get in and out of it without help and rip it around the golf course. Not gonna lie, it's been pretty cool to see her redemption arc. She's even talking about driving a car, but claims that she's gonna need some more practice. Some time passes and we get an update on the renovations being done to the house, and they are coming along much slower than expected. This place needs even more work than previously thought, so Chris offers Tammy to stay at his house until all of the work is complete. We also check in on Amanda, who's still pretty pissed off. She says that she's going to be leaving Kentucky for Christmas to see her boyfriend RJ down in Florida. She also says that she wants to take a step back from the family, mainly because of Tammy. Tammy refused to apologize, and Amanda was still holding firm in kicking her out. So Tammy took up Chris on his offer and went to stay with him. And neither Brittany or Tammy are thrilled about this. We then flash forward a month, and for the entire time, Tammy has been living with Chris. Chris says that the house will be done in about 2 weeks, but Tammy claims that he said that weeks ago. And everyone's been getting along okay, but Chris already has other members of his family living in the home, so it's gotta be pretty cramped now that Tammy's there. But Chris and Tammy get along extremely well. I think their bond as siblings has been strengthened through their shared weight loss journey. Chris and Tammy have been to far more appointments together than Tammy and Amy, so Tammy living at Chris's wasn't too bad. Much better than all the problems Amanda's house brought. And Tammy has still been making amazing progress. She weighed in at Chris's house at around 281 pounds, now weighing less than Chris. Neither of them qualify for skin removal surgery quite yet, but their progress is amazing. Chris had faltered a bit recently, but I think having Tammy in the house was helping. The next big thing to happen would be Amy's dinner party. Her and Amanda had taken a cooking class, and that's where she got the idea. But she also wanted to use it as a way for her sisters to reconcile. Both of them agree to go to the party, but neither seem like they're quite ready to apologize. During the dinner, Tammy and Amanda agree that this isn't the place to argue, somewhat setting their differences aside. And the dinner went well until Amanda announced that she was moving from Kentucky to Florida to not only be with her new boyfriend RJ, but also get away from the family. Amy and Chris were of course not happy about this, but me and Tammy didn't really care. Personally, I find Amanda more irritating than anything else. She's incredibly rude when she doesn't have to be, and has a dramatic streak. As far as I'm concerned, good riddance. And I think Tammy felt the same way. She was the one that initially talked about moving out of Kentucky, but Amanda swooped in and stole her thunder. The next episode opens with Chris talking about his disdain for Amanda's move. He thinks that her new boyfriend is shady, especially since he hasn't made an effort to meet the family yet, and is mainly upset that his sister is moving 14 hours away. All I got to say is it can't be easy being the pseudo-patriarch of this family. Between Jerry, the BBW king, and now RJ, his sisters are gonna have him in an early grave. Just wait until you see Amy's new boyfriend. But I'm getting way ahead of myself, because we're about to cover the funniest moment of season 6, the Slayton sisters' day out. Amy would rent a limo so that her and Tammy could have a fun night out. They haven't really done anything together in years, ever since Amy moved out of the duplex, so it was cool to see just them going out doing stuff. But the stuff that Amy had planned wasn't really to Tammy's liking. The first stop on their journey is a burlesque dancing class, and Tammy doesn't really seem comfortable. She's become a lot more reserved since losing the weight. This is definitely something that Amy wants to do though. She's actively searching for a man. This dance class seems like something Jerry would really be into. This is a picture of the instructor, and I don't really think I can show much more of it. Even TLC had to blur out some of her moves. Clearly uncomfortable with the class, Tammy would lay into Amy on the limo drive back, saying that she's had enough of Amy making a fool of herself. Also angry that Amy had been making jokes about a sausage left on a charcuterie board in the back of the limo. And as the argument begins to get worse, Amy leaves the limo, and they cancel the dinner they had planned. I wish Tammy would have lightened up and had a little bit of fun, but she does have a point about Amy. She is a mother of 2 plastering herself on national television, and ever since she divorced Michael, she's been a completely different person, hitting on just about anything that breathes. Even the Santa that she took her kids to see. Amy has absolutely no shame, and like I said before, she reminds me a lot of season 3 Tammy. There's also a side plot in this episode where Chris and Misty try to talk Amanda out of moving, but I just can't be bothered to discuss the situation anymore. Episode 7 begins with Amy going out to the dinner that her and Tammy had planned, basically uninviting her. Tammy would just go home and Amy would eat this nice meal completely alone. When Chris hears about yet another fight between family members, he shows even more frustration. It seems like everyone but him and Misty are getting in fights, so he's got to play mediator 95% of the time. We also see the family begin to discuss their UK trip. Amy very infamously said in season 1 that they were descendants of the Queen of England, but after getting a genealogy test, this was proven false. But they did have some English ancestry. I could have told them that. Chris is the spitting image of Henry VIII. But before they can go on the trip, Chris knows that he needs to bridge the gap between his siblings, setting Amy and Tammy down to work out their fight during the limo trip. And just like they've done many times, they agree to set it all aside, because this trip to the UK is a dream for both of them. But it doesn't go as smoothly when Amanda and Tammy attempt to reconcile. Amanda takes the first step and tells Tammy that she wants to put all of this behind them, so that they can still have a relationship after her move, also claiming that she's always stood up for Tammy. Well, Tammy ain't having none of it. She almost immediately gets pissed, saying that she doesn't want a relationship with Amanda, once again calling her a slut and storming off. And we're left to speculate if the London trip will even happen. We then cut to the Slayton family participating in a 5K. Amy has come horribly prepared wearing slides, and Tammy showed up late to sit on the sidelines and cheer the family on. Chris would be the first of the family to complete the 5K, coming in at a pretty decent time. But Amy and Amanda came in last place. They took so long that the finish line was taken down, but still completed the 5K nonetheless. After the race, we cut to the family helping Amanda with her items, loading them up because she's getting ready to move. And when they're done, the family all joins hands in prayer to wish Amanda safety in her travels. But Tammy refuses to participate in this prayer, claiming that Amanda should be happy that she even came in the first place. It's clear that their relationship is worse than ever. After this, we get an update on Chris and Tammy's progress with skin removal surgery. Each one of them needed to lose just a little bit more weight and they would qualify. Tammy says that her excess skin has been causing her a lot of problems, particularly pain where the skin rubs together, and I think Chris has been having having similar issues, so they're both very excited for this. When they weigh Chris, he comes in at 265 pounds, just barely meeting his goal. But he still made it, so he's approved for his skin removal. I'm not going to show you clips, but it's brutal. I have legitimately seen Chris's belly button and a huge piece of his stomach just laying on a table, like some kind of sea creature. Tammy has also met her goals, but is told that her skin removal will be far more extensive, needing a full team of doctors to work on her, and multiple surgery sessions with healing in between. The doc tells her it's going to be a long and painful road, and that he personally doesn't feel comfortable performing the operations, claiming that she will need an extensive team. So Tammy is basically approved but has to find new doctors. Kind of a bittersweet moment for Tammy. We then jump about a week forward to the family's trip in London. If you would have told me season 2 that I'd be seeing Amy Slayton in front of Windsor Castle season 6, I would have said you're crazier than Jerry. It still blows my mind how far this show has come, and how much some of its characters have developed. Tammy was having a rough go of it. All of the travel had taken a toll on her, so when they finally got to London, she had to relax for a bit. And in a city with thousands of years of history, Tammy seemed to be the most interested in this pigeon, because she had never seen one before. This makes a ton of sense because Tammy very rarely visits cities. I can promise the people who don't know about pigeons that they're nothing to write home about. Unless they're a pet pigeon, those are kinda cool. The wild ones are just sky rats, who rain down buckets of shit every day. Personally, I'm not a big fan. After Tammy rests and recovers, the family goes out for a traditional British dinner, and what they would get is a classic Scottish beef pie with a side of mashed potatoes and parsley gravy. The family said the gravy tasted like grass, and that the potatoes had absolutely no flavor. Amy said it needed salt and pepper. I'm not gonna go off too hard about British food, but this just looks like slop. I don't know if this is how the food is supposed to look, or they just experienced a bad chef, but I've seen prison trays that look better than this. And don't even get me started on the baked potatoes. Tuna and beans? I don't know why you would do it to yourself, but like I said, I can't judge too hard. God only knows what they put in hot dogs, and I love putting them bad boys over some charcoal. But I digress. The next big thing to happen in London would be the family meeting with a genealogist, who had some pretty shocking news for them. He had uncovered that the Slaytons were descended from a knight, Sir Thomas Clarke, born in 1520. The genealogist would also say that them being related to a knight could mean that further down they are related to royalty, and it's starting to dawn upon me that the whole knight thing might have been another case of nepotism. The genealogist also tells them they're related to a man that sailed aboard the Mayflower. The grandson of Sir Thomas Clarke may have been one of the first colonists in America. They were also told that Sir Thomas Clarke was local, and that there is a pub less than 3 miles away that's been operating since the 1500s, possibly being the place that he frequented. When they get to the bar, the family tries some traditional spotted dick, and Amy says this is the best spotted dick she's ever had in her life. I trust her judgment on this one. The family then orders some hot tea, and Amy starts crying about how she misses her kids, but she's only gonna get more emotional. Tammy has a tough time getting into the pub. There are a lot of stairs in London, and Amy starts crying about how nothing is handicap accessible here. Amanda tells Amy to calm down, she's causing a scene, and this causes an even bigger scene, with Amy getting mad at Amanda and storming off. Ever the mediator, Chris would track Amy down and bring her back to lunch. After eating a bit, Amy starts hysterically laughing, claiming that she was just hungry, and that she's gonna make the most out of her last day in London. If you ask me, Amy seems a lot more erratic in these past couple seasons. I know she's going through a lot, but I think there also could be other things going on. Nothing else of note would happen during the London trip, but the family would cite it as a moment of healing. That this trip brought them all together and squashed Tammy and Amanda's beef, which from this point forward seems settled. And things keep getting better because when they get back, the house is all but finished, and Tammy can move in. Tammy has been living with Chris and his wife Brittany for the past 3 or 4 months, so this is also going to improve their relationship, no longer being roommates, but neighbors. Amy also has priorities upon returning, but they are far different. She goes and takes a bunch of fancy photos photos to use for dating profiles online, saying that she really wants someone, preferably with all of his hair and teeth. Now that's what I call standards. Next, we witness Chris's skin removal, which I'm gonna say again is visceral. I've never seen anything like it, and I don't think I can include it in this video. But like I said, they just plopped this man's belly button on a table to the side. They took quite a bit off, but the surgery was a resounding success, but he's in pretty rough shape. I've heard the recovery process for skin removal is pretty damn painful. It just takes a while for all of those incisions to heal up. Tammy is also approved to start her skin removal process. That is until she drops a bombshell on us, that she's been vaping again, so the doctors deny her until she can quit. To my understanding, smoking can inhibit people's healing factor, if you want me to put it in Wolverine terms. So when your body is trying to heal these massive incisions where all that skin was taken off, it needs about all the help it can get with recovery. It's the same reason they wouldn't let Chris get the surgeries until he quit smoking. I also think that these habits are partly what put Tammy in the hospital, way back in season 3. When she was partying hard with the BBW King, they got up to stuff like this, and I'm pretty sure she ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. Tammy is also told that she needs to up her protein intake, and that's basically where the season ends. On somewhat of a cliffhanger, Tammy only having one more thing standing in her way to skin removal. Season 6 was kind of a mixed bag, extremely interesting at some points, but rather dull in others. I would rank it among some of the least entertaining seasons of this series, but the same cannot be said for season 7, which in my humble opinion is one of the best. The hype for season 7 was immense because Amy had found herself in a little bit of trouble. In between seasons 6 and 7, Amy was arrested for possession after being bitten by a camel at a petting zoo. We'll get into the details later when we cover that bit of season 7, but the police arrived and found her with some illegal substances in her car. And it's kinda hard to keep news like this from going out, so people couldn't wait to see Amy explain herself in the upcoming season. And it all begins with the introduction of Amy's new boyfriend, a man named Brian, meeting him in a mosh pit at a concert. How do I describe Brian? I think if I could use one word, it would be jittery. Seems like his jaw is always clenched, eyes moving side to side, and he just can't sit still. Many have theorized as to why, and I think we'll get a much better understanding when we eventually cover the camel incident, because he was there, filming the whole event. After that, we get an update on Amanda, who was supposed to move to Florida at the end of the last season. Her and RJ must have had a falling out, because she returned quickly to Kentucky, and has been living with Amy for the past couple of months. Tammy has also been adjusting since moving out of Chris's place, and into a home next door. She says that she really likes it, but that her and Chris's wife are still having problems, claiming that Brittany's always nagging her. We also check in on brother Chris, who is fully healed from his skin removal and loving life. Everything is great except for his relationship with Tammy. She's visiting less and less, and Chris notices. They have her over for dinner, and Chris tells her not to be a stranger, she lives next door. And Brittany makes a comment how she's never alone, there are always people pulling in and out of her house. And it's become clear to me that the problem isn't between Chris and Tammy, but Tammy and Brittany. I don't know what it is, but my personal theory is that Brittany is jealous that Tammy has been taking Chris's time away from her, but I could be reading into it way too much. All I know is for the past 3 seasons, Chris and Tammy have been tight, and now things are a little different. After that conversation, we get a little bit more information on Amy's new boyfriend, Brian. Amy says that he's about 50, and that they both got matching tattoos on their second date. You may have noticed that Amy has had this Jack Skellington tattoo forever, but the little writing below, Scary Love, is new. Brian has the exact same thing. Amy also says that Brian wants her to get her tubes untied for the possibility of them starting a family together. Tammy would also reveal that she's found a new partner, and that this time it's a woman, so she's worried about how her family will react. And the next episode opens with a date between the two. Her name is Andrea, and they met on a dating app, immediately hitting it off. But Tammy says she wants to take things slow, so they agree to go on more dates. We then cut to a date between Amy and Brian at a bar. She said that at first she wasn't really attracted to Brian, but then he was really nice, and she fell in love. Yeah, I don't buy any of that shit for a second, Amy. You were all horned up over a mall Santa last season. I think she's just trying to save face, and not make it seem like she was out looking for any guy she could get, only a couple months after divorcing her husband, the father of her 2 children, who will continue to play less of a role in Amy's story as the series progresses. The past couple of seasons have been all about Amy and her journey as a mom, but since Michael got booted out of the equation, she's had so many other things on her mind, mainly men, and that led to Brian. The two then talk about moving in together, while Brian teaches Amy to play pool, and this was when I started to notice his jittery nature. After that, we see a conversation between Brittany and Chris. Brittany says that she wants to get started on her weight loss journey to get the surgery, because she's always dreamed of being a mother. And Chris is supportive but also reluctant to start a new family. Chris already has 2 kids in their mid-20s and even a grandchild, so his worry about starting it all over is understandable. But I still think this is the primary reason that Brittany wants to lose weight, along with helping manage her diabetes, which she says has gotten a little bit out of hand. Brittany doesn't really talk much, so half the time I can only assume what she's thinking, and it's kinda refreshing to hear her voice her thoughts for once, instead of just sitting in the background quietly grinning. It kills me when I see the Slaytons having a big fight, and Brittany is in the background with a big smile on her face, thinking this is the funniest shit ever, just like the rest of us. After that, we flash forward a couple of weeks to get an update on the living situation between Amanda and Amy. Amanda has moved in her 2 full-grown sons, the same ones that Amy criticized for breaking her window and eating all of her food, and they've been doing the same stuff at Amy's house, specifically eating her food and inviting their friends over. Amy is overwhelmed, which is nothing new, but she says that she's ready for Amanda to move out, and it seems like Amanda wants to, but for some reason or another hasn't. After that, we are introduced to a brand new character through Tammy, a man named Steven, one of Tammy's few friends from high school. Steven had similar struggles in high school due to being made fun of for being gay, and Tammy was ridiculed thoroughly for her weight, eventually leading to a kinship between the two that has lasted to this day. I will say that Steven seems like a legitimate friend to Tammy. I don't think that he's here for the clout, which is very refreshing after her dealing with the likes of the BBW King and, of course, Jerry. Though I guess Jerry wasn't really in it for the clout, he did it all for the nookie. After the lunch with their friend, we cut to a crystal therapy session that the 2 sisters are enduring. It's called Reiki, I think that's how it's pronounced, but it seems like a combination of a lot of things. Meditation, massage, and also various types of crystals which are meant to draw out bad energies. Amy fell asleep during the process, claiming that she couldn't feel anything from it. But Tammy actually got something from this. She said at first she felt an overwhelmingly dark energy, but let it out with emotions. After all of it's over, Tammy acts like she was profoundly impacted, claiming that she feels free. The next major thing to happen would be during the family's outing to pick apples. Amy is growing increasingly frustrated with Amanda and her boys living in her home, saying that her kids have basically taken over the house, telling Chris that she plans to move in with Brian to get away from it all. She also tells Chris that Brian is baby-proofing the house, and that she's considering having more children. Chris tells her that she's crazy, they've only been together for 6 weeks, that he understands wanting to get away from Amanda, but also that they should take it slower, finishing with a warning not to repeat what happened with her and Michael. Season 7, Episode 3 opens with the sisters spending a day at the lake. Amy is annoyed because it was supposed to be a girls' day, and Amanda brought her boys along. Despite the friction, this doesn't cause any problems, and Tammy feels comfortable enough not only to swim in in the lake, but also to tell her sisters about her new partner. Misty and Amanda have no idea why she waited this long to tell them. Amanda even saying that one of her sons is gay. They're just happy that Tammy's happy, just hoping that Andrea treats her right. I really don't think they have anything to worry about. Stack her up against the likes of the BBW King and Jerry. This is a cakewalk compared to her previous relationships. Skip ahead a couple more days, and Tammy along with Chris are back in Dr. Smith's office, checking in on Tammy's progress towards skin removal surgery. After testing Tammy, it's revealed that she has no nicotine in her system, but that her protein count was still just a little bit low, and that the only thing holding her back now was that. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit frustrated with Tammy continuing to get denied skin removal, but then I thought about it more. This is going to be one of the most extreme cases of skin removal that these doctors have ever embarked on. She's going to need multiple surgeries, and it's going to take a very long time to recover. Those extra protein levels could make a huge difference in the long term, but she's very close, and we'll get another update soon. For now, we're just going to have to settle with more information on Amy and Brian. After going on another date, this time axe throwing, Brian officially asks Amy to move in, and she says that she'll do so as soon as he's baby-proofed the house. Once again, I see Amy as extremely irresponsible for this. Knowing a man for less than 3 months and moving your 2 young children in with him seems selfish to me. She's prioritizing her own happiness over the safety of her children. We don't know anything about Brian. He could be the fucking hash-slinging slasher for all we know. But like she's been known to do, Amy just disregards all of the negative, putting 100% into her relationship with Brian. But one fateful day, they decided to go to a petting zoo, one that you drive through and feed the animals, only for Amy to be viciously bitten by a camel completely unprovoked. Maybe I missed something, but she didn't do anything to this camel, but you can see what it did to her. And this wasn't no love bite either. Amy had a huge chunk of her skin pierced by camel teeth. I can't show it here, but it got her good. There was even a little piece of fat that the camel hadn't swallowed, just laying on Amy's skin. Amy thought that she was going to lose her arm, so an ambulance came, along with police who would search their car. Police detected a foul odor coming from their car, searched it, and found not only a bag of pot, but also magic mushrooms. Now I want you to keep in mind that during this trip to the petting zoo, Amy's 2 children were also in the vehicle, not only seeing their mom get bit by the camel, but also arrested for possession. Another thing I want to point out is how the show painted all this. They said absolutely nothing about the mushrooms, making it seem like Amy and Brian had just been caught with a little bit of pot. That is not the case. God only knows what else Brian is indulging in. Like I said, the man just has wild eyes. They never stay in one place for long. All of this happened at the hospital, by the way. Amy is recovering from her camel bite and sees Brian getting questioned by the cops, and the rest is history. All I know is that had to have been one of the worst days of her life. Episode 4 also opens with more cover-up. Amy lying about what the police found on them, claiming that she had a medical card for what she was arrested for. She also revealed that Chris was the one that bailed her out of jail, and I cannot wait for that conversation, which is coming a lot sooner than Amy would hope. After acquiring a nasty infection from her camel bite, she went to pick up medication, not knowing that all of her siblings were currently setting up a pseudo-intervention for her. Everyone else is kind of dancing around the subject, except for Misty, the de facto matriarch of the Slayton family. She says that she wants Amy to get better, but is pissed that she would do this with her kids in the car. A very valid point, because this could have easily become a problem with CPS. Despite all the planning for the intervention, it still goes horribly. Amy seems unable to healthily take criticism, seeing it all as a direct attack upon her character, and not advice on how to be a less shitty person. When the intervention actually happens, Amy immediately tries to leave, knowing exactly exactly what's going on when she sees all of the family gathered. Chris convinces her to set back down, but it's still a complete shit show. Amanda gets frustrated and leaves, and then so does Amy, no one getting a single word through to her. The rest of the episode consists of the family attending a local festival called Cornfest. Chris helps run one of his friend's food trucks, hoping to own one himself someday, and Amy discusses the court date, along with her fears of being away from her children if she has to go to jail. And Amy does have a reason to be worried. Chris would tell her the next day during a car ride that if they threw the book at her, it could mean 30 years, and he wants her to take this more seriously. After this, we cut to a salon day with Darlene and Tammy. Darlene is worried about Amy's upcoming court case, but says that Amy did the crime and needs to pay the price. Tammy would also reveal to her mother that she is dating Andrea, and shockingly, Darlene is supportive, saying that she'll even meet Andrea in the future. It's crazy to say, but even Darlene seems to be turning things around. She's nicer, more supportive, and maybe that's a byproduct of the TV cameras, but with so many members of this family really changing their lives, I hope Darlene follows in their footsteps. I'm not referring to Amy when I talk about that. She has completely ruined any goodwill that was bought with me in the previous seasons, which was already so little because of her past controversies involving scams and animals. After Darlene and Tammy got their haircut, we jump to Amy, who is at a doctor's appointment, and apparently they're doing some scans on her brain when they discover something pretty shocking, that Amy's brain is only working at 14%. This is for unknown reasons, and the doctor says that he'd really like to see her somewhere around 80%. This is legitimately the only time that they go and see the brain doctor, but I found it incredibly fascinating, so I had to include it, especially since Amy is about to prove the doctor's right. During a visit to a haunted house, Brian drops down on one knee and proposes to Amy, who quickly accepts, making them fiancés. Tammy and Misty are also there, and find the whole situation hilarious, along with incredibly awkward, claiming that they think Amy is just running with it, not really planning for the future. Amy also says that she thinks everything is going too fast, but with Brian, she just doesn't care. And Brian doesn't care either. The dude doesn't seem like he's paying attention to anything half the time, just twitching and smiling. After noticing that her sisters were not nearly as excited as she was, Amy starts crying, once again about how no one cares about her. But why would they? Amy didn't do anything big for Tammy when she had her wedding to Caleb. Maybe she really is a descendant of the queen. Rules for thee and not for me. The drama would kick it up another notch when the next day Chris was informed of Amy's engagement. I don't think Amy bothered telling him, and once again he was pissed, saying that they're trying to plan a wedding when they should be planning her court date. It's also revealed that Amy wants to have her wedding in a haunted asylum, and the family, who are highly religious, refuse this, not wanting to tamper with evil spirits. And while her sister is worrying about her haunted asylum wedding to a jittery man almost twice her age, Tammy is out making the most of life, something that even I haven't done, and that's going ziplining, which she absolutely loved. Since starting her weight loss journey, Tammy has lost 500 pounds, making this an image that almost no one expected to see. After that, we get an update on Amy and Brian's court case. Chris is driving them both to attend it, because he knows that if Brian gets arrested, Amy will have no ride home. The car ride is extremely awkward, and there is noticeable tension between Brian and Chris. And when they got to court, nothing major would happen. Their lawyer would ask for a continuance, which was granted, needing to see them again in 30 days. But things on the Tammy front are much better, which has become the new norm. During a visit with Dr. Smith, Tammy is finally approved for skin removal surgery. The doctor says that her protein levels weren't quite there yet, but that he's gonna approve her anyways. And Tammy is of course joyous. She will lose a substantial amount of weight after the surgery due to the removal of the excess skin, and it's gonna make her so much much more mobile. This is a huge step, but the beginning of a long and painful process, because like I said, she is going to be one of the more extreme cases. After that, Amy goes over to Brian's house to assist in the baby proofing, and the house is good, but the backyard is literally one of the most unsafe places for a child I've ever seen. A pool that is clearly not blocked off, filled with stagnant water. Even a drop of something like that could have severe implications for your health, let alone if you fell in and didn't know how to swim, like Amy's very young boys. Eventually, the sisters get into a fight about Amy rushing the wedding, and even more so about her location of choice. As we know, the Slayton sisters profoundly believe in the paranormal, so Tammy ain't going nowhere near it. Amy is of course upset, but far less than usual, because her court date's coming up, and things are not looking good. Her lawyer urges her to take a plea deal, so that neither of them get any jail time, and that's what ends up happening. The judge gives Amy 2 years of probation, along with fines, check-ins, and her attending a parenting class. She is also banned from the safari park for life, and Amy is of course pleased by all this. It's basically a slap on the wrist, but Chris ain't gonna let her get off so easy. During the car ride home, he begins to lecture Amy on her recent weight gain. He also gets on to Brian for enabling her, particularly giving her sodies, and Brian just takes it. He can clearly sense Chris's alpha energy and wants absolutely none of the smoke. After this heated argument, we cut to a dinner that has been hosted by Tammy at a fancy restaurant, and in celebration of her approval for skin removal surgery. This dinner was also Tammy's way of thanking everyone for their help in her progress. As where Amy believes that the family does nothing for her, Tammy acknowledges each of their role in her weight loss, which essentially means her survival. This moment was highly emotional and served as a well-deserved victory lap for Tammy. But she's still very nervous about the surgery. Like we talked about earlier, she has a big fear of not waking back up, and the morning of the surgery she went beside her house and threw up pretty bad, due to the nerves. When they weighed Tammy at the clinic, she weighed exactly 200 pounds, making her one of the thinnest Slayton siblings. But like I said, the skin removal process for her is going to be extensive, and done in numerous stages, but this was her first round, addressing the most problematic areas. Tammy is still extremely nervous, but her siblings wish her well and she goes off to surgery. While Chris, Amanda, and Amy wait for her to finish up, Amanda suggests that they all play pool, and Chris calls her the blondest person that he's ever met. Shockingly, Amanda brushes it off, saying that they're all just nervous. And it seems like maybe even Amanda is maturing and becoming a better person, but they get into it once again when Chris says that she's making light of a serious situation, causing her to storm off. But she quickly cools off and they all come back to the waiting. And everything's going great until Amy rips ass, and it's so bad that the siblings each consider leaving the room. This makes Amy get pissy and walk out of the room, to which both of her siblings protest, and Chris follows her out into the lobby, where they get into another fight about how no one wants to go to Amy's wedding. Amy says that she canceled the wedding because no one wants to come anyways, and Chris says that her wedding is against his religion because of the venue being a haunted asylum. Chris tells Amy that he's got enough goddamn demons on his back and that he don't need no more, ending the episode rather dramatically as Amy leaves the building. After everyone calms down, the doctor explains that the surgery was a success, and that the only reason it took so long was that their needle count was off. Hoping they didn't sew one back inside Tammy, they had to find it. But other than that, there were no complications. The recovery process, however, looks extremely painful. Tammy is bandaged damn near head to toe, having work done on her stomach, arms, and even face. She's gonna be out of commission for quite some time. As soon as Amy heard that Tammy was alright, she called Brian to come pick her up, saying that she just can't take Chris and Amanda bullying her anymore. But the siblings were pissed that she didn't wait longer to go see Tammy, driving an even bigger wedge between them. 2 days later, and we get our first real Tammy update. She says the pain is excruciating, somewhere around around a 9 out of 10, but she had recovered enough to where they could take her head wrap off, and Tammy was thrilled to see all the work they had done on her neck. It was something that she felt great insecurity over, and asked for it to be one of the first things handled. Of course, her siblings are so proud of her, as she is of herself, but she would still need to remain where she is until she had recovered more. So Chris and Amanda head home. Flash forward a couple of weeks and Tammy is home, looking completely different after her skin removal, and she decides to have a talk with Amy, who didn't wait until she was awake to talk to her in the hospital after her surgery. Tammy said that she could have just distanced herself from Chris and Amanda, and that she shouldn't have left because Tammy didn't do anything to her, and this was a moment where she needed her. And Amy starts rolling out the usual pity party, but Tammy's not hearing any of it, leaving this conversation because she can't sit there and listen to Amy feel bad for herself. Tammy also says that she thinks an evil spirit is latched on to her sister, saying that she wants her back. The season 7 finale starts with a moment of healing between the sisters, as they visit the site of their old duplex, which has now been demolished, reflecting on all the good memories they had there, like their ghost cat, Tater Wedge. Tammy then wants to take a trip to the mailbox because she was never able to walk there on her own, symbolic to not only her but the viewers. Season 1 Tammy wouldn't have even attempted this. I only wish Amy had the same levels of progress. Then they go back to the iconic junkyard that they were weighed in Season 1. Amy's up first, and the first time that she got weighed there, she was 106 pounds, now down to 249, a weight that Amy is happy with, but still knows that she has been recently gaining. Then there's Tammy, who initially weighed in at 605 years ago, and is now down to around 216 pounds, losing almost 500 from her heaviest weight ever, which was somewhere around Season 2 or 3. And the season ends with the Slayton sisters releasing another lantern in the name of Caleb, saying a few words about him and then embarking upon new journeys. Many believe that Season 7 will be the final season of 1,000 Pound Sisters, and I can see where they think that. The last episode of Season 7 somewhat feels like it's wrapping things up, but there is still so much that could happen in Season 8. Amy's wedding, the family continuing to get the surgeries they need, and of course more interpersonal drama. There hasn't been any official confirmation yet, but eagle-eyed fans claim to have seen the Slaytons out filming, and some have even attended Amy's art shows. She's recently been selling stuff like this, and to my knowledge is still with Brian planning to get married. Tammy's been a lot more low-key, continuing her relationship with Andrea, and working on her weight loss. Chris is also making excellent progress. Him and his wife are even considering having another child. Misty's always good, she's pretty put together. And then Amanda is Amanda. Almost all of them have had their own unique character arc in the past 4 seasons, and I didn't really notice it until I had to watch all the seasons back to back. Tammy is a completely different person, and when you lose 500 pounds, I could see why. Regardless of the progress that the family's made, I absolutely love this series. Even if none of them lost weight, I'd probably still watch it, because they're such characters. 1,000 Pound Sisters is one of my favorite reality shows of all time. I'll never forget watching episode premieres with my little brother, my first introduction to the BBW king Philip, or the tragic passing of Little Bit. I love this show so much that I've probably spent over 100 hours making this video. 7 seasons of 1,000 Pound Sisters with no commercials comes out to about 40 or 50 hours of just watching the show. Not to mention the notes, the editing. I know this video doesn't look like anything special, but it's probably one of the hardest projects I've ever done. And most of what I do is summarize a TV show. But not only have I saved you about 50 hours of watching 1,000 Pound Sisters, I've also brought to you details that are not covered in the show, like the other things found in Amy's car, or the various controversies she found herself in before filming even started. I will keep watching this show until it turns into unrecognizable slop. And in my opinion, Season 7 has been one of their strongest yet. I know that Season 8 is going to be nuts, but even if they make a Season 30, I won't be satisfied, because when it comes to this show, I need 1,000 seasons.